All right. We are live. Give folks a few seconds to join as they're joining. But hello, wherever you're joining from. Thank you for being with us. My name is Shuchi, and I'm your host and moderator for today. Tell us where you're joining from, say hello, put your comments in the chat, and feel free to chime in with any questions you might have. And we'll try our best to address them. So we have some time towards the end that we've kept for our Q&A. Sustainability, as we all know, or may not, is multifaceted, and we're joined by an esteemed group of experts focused on some key pillars. So ladies, it's an absolute joy and pleasure to have you join us today. Thank you for being with us and excited to dive deep. Perhaps maybe we can start with a quick round of intros. Tell us a little bit about your background, what got you started, what keeps you going, and why is this topic important to you? How about we start with Roberta?
Thank you. So my name is Roberta Boscolo, and I work for the World Meteorological Organization. I'm a scientific officer, and I lead a team working on climate and energy. So I have a degree in physics and a master in physical oceanography. So my background is physical science. I had the opportunity to work in a project as a project coordinator for a 10-year experiment on the ocean, and to understand and then I started to get closer to this topic of climate change because I was studying the role of the ocean on the climate. So what keep me going is really the gravity and the urgency and the agency of this situation. The consequences of climate change are far-reaching and affecting many aspects of human life and natural environment, including food, water security, public health, biodiversity, and economic growth. So we have to start acting now, and this is basically the agency part, to really start to look at tools that are needed to mitigate the impact of climate change.
Absolutely, very important work. Thank you, Roberta, for everything that you do. Stephanie, maybe.
Hi, everyone. Really glad to be here. My name is Stephanie Benedetto, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Queen of Raw. I actually come from a family of over 100 years in fashion, textiles, and supply chains. So I grew up around the business. I did not do the family route, though. I ended up on Wall Street as a corporate attorney, but representing fashion, technology, and sustainability companies. So I guess we get back to our roots and who we are at the end of the day. And had seen firsthand in supply chains all the waste, all the unused fabric, raw materials, clothing, finished goods that sit in warehouses collecting dust or being burned or sent to landfill. And obviously all that's really damaging for people and planet, but it makes zero sense for a business's profit. And the good news is that by refashioning supply chains, we can actually solve things like the world's water crisis if we rethink how we do things. So we came on to tackle this waste issue. We built software so anyone from a student or maker, crafter, or designer to the biggest companies in the world can identify all this unused waste, unused raw materials, excess finished goods, and take action on it. Reuse it, sell it, recycle it, donate it, keep it out of landfill, and turn what would be pollution into profit. So excited here to talk about some of these solutions and how we can take action and make a big difference and change the world.
Wonderful. Excited to dive deep to how you do that, but very exciting. Thank you. Tatyana.
Hi, I'm thrilled to be here. My name is Tatyana Kanzaveli, and I'm the founder and CEO of Open Health Network. My background is in computer sciences, and I've been using a lot of data in many different applications across many different industries, and everything was fine until I was diagnosed with cancer. And at that time, I decided to shift into healthcare, specifically into all aspects of things that impact causation, treatment, and outcome of different diseases. And to me, the approach to healthcare is to look at everything from environment all the way to genetics. And going back to the environment, the topic of this session is there is huge correlation between air, water, and environment we live in on diseases, and there is a huge impact on in underserved communities. So I kind of dedicated the focus on holistic approach in one of the key pieces that tend to be ignored when we look at the, anything in healthcare is the environment, sustainability, and everything else that surrounds our communities. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you again for everything that you do. And Lindsay?
Hello, everyone. Lindsay Harris-Che. I am the Senior Director of ESG Social Strategy at ServiceNow. I have spent my career working in corporate social responsibility and social impact, particularly in the tech industry, and really looking at how can we create sustainable, measurable impact for companies by utilizing all of our resources to drive impact. Looking at the return on investment and how do you actually integrate ESG into your business strategy, with a really large focus on thinking about intersectionality as well as cross collaboration. You'll hear that from me a lot, is that it's incredibly important that we are, one, utilizing all of our resources to create measurable impact, but also breaking down silos both internally and externally to increase collaboration, to make sure that we're having the greatest impact we can have and starting to move the needle on some of the world's most complex problems.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do. And thank you for being here. All right, maybe we can start with setting the context for the audience, and to perhaps, I think Roberta alluded to the gravity and urgency of this topic and why is it important for everyone. Can each of you, perhaps from your own perspective and your own experience, give us a lay of the land, maybe some data that you can share, what you're seeing, what are we up against, and what is it that we need to perhaps work towards? So Stephanie, I'm going to have you start from a material standpoint, like from a lack of transparency in global supply chains and the waste that happens across the globe. What are you seeing?
You know, it is a bigger problem, I think, than people realize. We've spent a lot of time quantifying the data because you don't know what you don't know. And so stuff that is wasted, traditionally, nobody knew. But based on our research, every single year, over $288 billion worth of unused fabric alone sits in warehouses collecting dust or being burned or sent to landfill. And when you look at other industries, other raw material categories and add finished goods, this is a multi-trillion-dollar a year problem and growing. Obviously growing because of what we're all going through. Pandemics, trade wars, recessions, more unused stuff than ever before. I don't like to harp too much on the scary statistics because I like to talk about what we can all do about it. But one that always resonated with me, according to the World Wildlife Fund, if we continue at the current pace of textile production alone, by 2025, 2/3 of the entire world's population will face shortages of fresh water and be exposed to hazardous chemicals. And that's from textile production alone. And I mention that because this is not happening 50 years from now. This is not happening 5 years from now. This is happening today and on our shores. But like I always say, the good news is if you can flip those metrics, we actually have the power to solve the world's water crisis if we rethink how we do things, minimize waste, and have greater transparency in our supply chains. I think a lot about the metrics, and I know we'll get into that, but just by the work that we've done, we've saved well over 1 billion gallons of water, and we're just getting started. And that's actually enough clean water for 1.4 million people to drink around the world for 3 years. So I say that to never doubt that the actions that you take personally and professionally, when you add them up, does have the power to change the world.
Absolutely. Thank you. Lindsay, from an ESG perspective, what are you seeing in the industry? I know it's a relatively, I would say, new term initiative, but and sometimes it tends to be siloed. What are we working with in the enterprise landscape or corporate landscape?
When we think about ESG, there are two barriers that we're seeing, right? We have internally that cross collaboration. So CCP they do their annual giving in numbers, and they were just talking about where is ESG positioned in a company. 25% said marketing, 15% said HR, 8% said finance or legal. So we truly can't even decide where in a company does ESG live, right? There are benefits to all different areas. There are also so many resources being driven towards impact. However, are they working together? Is the DE&I team working very closely with the ESG team? In some companies, they're combined under the chief impact officer, and others they're not. So what we're seeing is a lot of resources being driven towards complex issues, but we're not seeing that collaboration internally. However, it even goes externally. So there are so many initiatives that you can think of that are wonderful. They're trying to solve the world's most complex problems. But you have companies doing these in silos. So there was a study done just by the UN SDGs that if we all put the UN SDGs at the center of the world's economic strategy, we could unlock $12 trillion a year in opportunities and generate 380 million jobs. But what is that going to require us to do? It's going to require us to rethink the economy, but we have to do it together. And that's the most important thing, is that we can no longer think that we can just, as individual companies or individuals, solve these issues. We really have to focus on what we're good at and make that impact, both internally and externally. And the more we can break down barriers and say, I'm a technology company, I'm a healthcare provider, we can all bring something to the table, but we need to go at it at a uniformed approach. And that's where there's immense potential. If you think about what the United Nations has done and the UN SDGs, if we can all start working towards those very specific outcomes instead of trying to scatter and solve problems here and there, then maybe if we start really focusing our resources, then we can actually see the change that we want to see. Starbucks just announced the United Nations Water Resilience. They're working with the United Nations Water Resilience Coalition, and they're bringing other companies along. And these are the kind of collaborations we need to see, because it's formalized, it's a standardized approach, and it'll really help break down those barriers and the silos that we're naturally seeing, just to make sure that we can have an impact. But we have to start to focus.
Very important point, for sure. Roberta, I know rising temperatures are definitely top of mind, and you read a lot about it. What keeps you up? What keeps you thinking? What keeps you going?
So I just want to make actually a reference to this latest state of climate report that the World Meteorological Organization has released just a few days ago. And this is an annual report of the state of the climate indicators that are those parameters that we monitor to provide a full checkup of the current physical situation. And I wanted to report a headline from CNN about summarizing this report, and they say the world just failed its annual health checkup. So I go back to health. But just a few statistics, global mean temperature in 2022 was 1.15 degree above the pre-industrial level. The past 8 years were the 8 warmest years in the instrumental record, which goes back to 1850. Concentration of the 3 main greenhouse gases are increasing and reached a record, observed a record high. Glacier, we have long-term observation of this glacier. We see that their thickness has changed to minus 1.3 meters in the last year. European Alps also smashed records of glacial melt due to combination of factors, especially very little winter snow and very long and intense heat waves from May to early September last year. And I can go on. The sea ice in Antarctica dropped to the lowest level on record. The Arctic Sea, heat contents on the ocean, global mean sea level. So all this, all this data shows that what is sustainability at the end, and all these changes that we observed are man-made, and we are crossing an uncharted territory with potential tipping points that create cascading effects, and that can be very catastrophic. So the world is, the work ahead is really to stop causing these changes, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and reach net zero by 2050, which is compatible with the Paris Agreement and the most ambitious target of the Paris Agreement.
Thank you. Definitely some work ahead of us. But Tatyana, what are you seeing from a health equity standpoint, or the lack thereof, or how are we doing globally?
Thank you. And thank you, Roberta, for sharing the numbers. And of course, all of that impacts our health, and it's our responsibility to not just ignore or look at the numbers, but start doing things. So going back to healthcare, a study published in PLOS ONE in 2016 found that if the global healthcare sector were a country, it would be the 5th largest emitter of greenhouse gases.
Mm.
In the United States, healthcare is responsible for nearly 10% of the nation's total greenhouse gas emissions. Wow. According to 2019 study in the Journal of the American Medical Association, so this all highlights the urgent need for sustainable practices in the industry. Mm-hmm. Some data on healthcare waste and resource use in 2018 study by the Journal of General Internal Medicine revealed that the estimated 29 billion pounds of biomedical waste is generated annually in the United States alone. Hospitals in country consume 7% of the total commercial water supply. Mm-hmm. So all these numbers, you would think, you wouldn't think about them when you think about healthcare, right? But those are the numbers that we kind of need to look at and start looking at all the aspects within the healthcare industry where we can provide significant impact on the environment.
Great, thank you. Thank you for sharing. From each of your perspectives, well, we've talked about what we need to work with, but let's maybe pivot to a more kind of positive conversation and a more solutions-focused conversation. What are some examples? Well, first of all, what does sustainability mean to each of you? And what are some of the success stories or examples that you're seeing in each of your domains that give you hope and that can become scalable solutions for tackling everything that we're faced with? Maybe we start with Roberta. From a climate perspective, what do you see as the path forward?
Yeah, and I'm going to, of course, do an example of energy because I work at the intersection between climate and energy. These two are two topics which are very, closely interlinked because energy is the sector that has, biggest impact on climate because it's the sector that emits almost 75% of the total of the greenhouse gases, and is why the way that we generate energy is the main cause of the climate change. So a good story, I think, is about the global electricity report that was released a few weeks ago, and showing that wind and solar generated 12% of the global power, which is up 10% up with respect to the last year. And clean electricity sources, including also nuclear, are now reached the 39% share globally. So this is a new record high. Of course, the growth in electricity demand is going up, is increasing, but it's likely that this increase in demand is matched by the solar and the wind power growth, with also more uptake in terms of new technology for electrification, like heat pumps and electric vehicle. I saw an article today from the International Energy Agency just saying that the electrical vehicles are really booming. The market for electric vehicles. So reduced carbon emission is what I think is important and is a key of sustainability. We can reduce our carbon footprint by also making our lifestyles changing in our lifestyle, such reducing energy consumption, driving less, eating more plant-based diet, and also reducing waste, as we have a lot of example here from my colleagues from textile to health sector as well, and support policies that promote clean energy and reduce emission, like renewable energy standards, carbon pricing, and regulation and industrial on industrial emissions. So yeah, I stop here, but key point, I think, use renewable energy for our industry and for our economic sectors.
Great, thanks. Stephanie, what do you think to bring more transparency from a supply chain standpoint and material sourcing? What are you seeing? Where are you seeing success?
It's absolutely mission critical to solve a lot of these challenges and problems. I just wanted to quickly touch on your question around the definition of sustainability. And I'm sure for everyone out there, it means a lot of things to a lot of people. That is part of the challenge. I personally prefer the word circular economy, because the second word in that is economy. And I hope that if everyone can walk away and understand that solving these challenges are economic principles that will save and make individuals and companies money while doing good. And how do you say no to that? And when we position it that way, I think we truly can have this kind of automation, scalability, and transparency that you're talking about, because it makes business sense. Think about it. If you were to go to a company, and a lot of them are making incredible commitments to be 100% sustainable and circular by 2030 or whatever the year is, and that's awesome. They're putting a stake in the ground as to what matters and making these big, bold commitments as to where our world is going. But where do you go and what do you do on day one? How do you not feel paralyzed by that kind of a commitment? And that's been really our success and point of view, is by focusing on, for example, a business's waste, you can take that stuff, take action on it, and save and make money. And then take the money that you've saved and made and put it back into doing good work in your supply chain. You can pay your workers more. You can adopt more innovative digital solutions. You can use more sustainable resources. And you can do it without your overall CapEx expenditure going up. And I think that's going to be so important with everything going on in the world, because businesses are businesses. You've got stakeholders to answer to, investors, customers. So let's do this in the way that it can be done that makes business sense while also solving this. To give you two quick examples, one case study for us, one of our Fortune 500 clients who used our software, Materia MX, they were able in a matter of weeks to take action on over 12 metric tons of excess stuff, diverted 95% from landfill and incineration, and saved over $4 million in holding costs alone in weeks. So I think that just shows, right, that this is possible to have that, and that transparency is a big part of that. One other quick example, and I know Lindsay touched a bit on this, the need for collaboration and community. There's a lot going on in the world right now. We work with the EU, the US Department of State, but there's also a lot of awesome opportunities locally. In New York City, we formed the New York Circular City Initiative. It was a cross collaboration between H&M, Unilever, Cisco, Goldman Sachs, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and a number of other awesome organizations, public, private, non-for-profit, technology partners like ours. And we wrote a white paper that is publicly available, showing not just why we need these kinds of solutions, but how many good jobs could be created and how much money could be saved and made by New York City going circular in the coming years. And so I think that point of view is really important as we look to the future in how we build this collaboration and partnerships that will make a difference.
Absolutely. And feel free to put the link if you have access to it.
I will do that.
Folks, and I'll also follow up in the follow-up email. I'm happy to share that. Lindsay, how are we doing it at ServiceNow or any other enterprises that you've perhaps seen it work at? And I know there's a climate justice initiative that we've launched, so I'd love for you to share more details on how are we doing it and where are you seeing success?
Yeah, I think when we think about how the world is transforming, there's a lot, we can have hope. We are seeing businesses really rethink ESG and begin to integrate it into our business strategy. McKinsey has reported that 90% of the S&P 500 companies all publish ESG reports. We're moving in the right direction. Do we have to move faster? Probably. We know that, the issues that we're facing are just accelerating at a pace that's a bit unexpected. But we can have hope. And at ServiceNow, we're really looking at what are those seismic catalytic events and opportunities that'll create a lot more change than just that one instance. And I'll give you an example. We work with an organization called Give Power. They are a solar energy nonprofit that provides infrastructure to the developing world. We have invested, we just announced a $3 million over 3-year investment in Give Power. And we're actually going to be providing sustainable desalination solar water farms. What is happening in Kenya right now is there is the worst drought in 40 years, and a lot of the wells are coming up salty. So in order to ensure that these communities have access to clean water, we are investing in these desalination solar water farms. Now, with one investment, we can impact over 100,000 people for 20 years. That changes a community. But think about water is just one element, literally, that, can actually transform a community. It can transform that people no longer have to go and get water on a daily basis. They aren't concerned about the drought. They can have sustainable farming techniques. So we really need to look at, across companies, how can we really merge the E, S, and the G and think about them holistically and look for those catalytic seismic changes that can have downstream impact. And that's where I say, if we can work together, we can have a huge impact, because we can start to look at, as Roberta was saying, infrastructure is incredibly important, and infrastructure can transform communities. So we all need to work together and say, if we put all of our resources towards this one opportunity, we can transform communities, and we need to start thinking about new methodologies for impact. I think examples of the climate pledge provide hope that companies are really moving in the right direction. You have 401 companies in 36 countries that are all signing up for the climate pledge. So we're moving in the right direction, and it's going to take each and every one of us to start thinking about our business strategy. That's one of our main focuses at ServiceNow is, yes, we have ES&G, we reflect inward, we have material topics, we have priority issues that are really important to our company, but how are we actually looking at our business strategy to help our customers amplify and succeed in their ESG goals? And if we can all start thinking about our business that way and thinking about what changes and what impacts can we have that are actually going to have downstream impact, that's where we're going to see the change we need to see. And we all need to work together, and we need to really look at what systems are in place that will allow us, such as the UN SDGs, to all start really focusing in on the changes that need to occur.
Great, thank you. Tatyana?
I really like, Lindsay, you mentioning holistic approach. And but first, I want to tell you what sustainability in healthcare means like to me. So to me, sustainability in healthcare means creating a system that is environmentally, socially, and economically responsible. It encompasses reducing the environmental footprint and ensuring long-term financial viability. It's all about striking a balance between meeting the needs of the present without compromising the well-being of future generations. And from my point of view, there are a lot of things, and I'm all about data, right? So if you can't, for example, provide a data that ties the state of the environment, access to food, access to healthcare data and outcomes, then it becomes, just kind of statements, right, without any data support. So as an example, in some of the deployments that we do, especially in underserved communities in US, we set up sensors, for example, that measure air quality, humidity, noise level, and we correlate that to all kinds of healthcare data along with biodata, HR data, and that gives you a context, because we can't take healthcare out of the context. There are a lot of good examples that have been in things exceptionally exciting happening in healthcare. For example, Kaiser has made significant effort in sustainability by setting ambitious goals for carbon neutrality, water conservations, and waste reduction. And their efforts led to 30% reduction in water usage, 40% decrease in greenhouse gas emission, and over 100 of their facilities achieved LEED certification. So all those things are possible. And I think we need to create kind of a repository of all those initiatives so they can be used as a tool set for other organizations to use. Because if, all those stories are not necessarily shared. And I'm super excited that at least what I'm seeing and what we're doing and the types of new things that we are engaging with, we are incorporating all those aspects that impact, health.
Wonderful. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about what role do you feel technology plays in tackling these challenges, and how does tech-enabled governance kind of help overcome these issues and turning what we have is ideas into actually impact and actions. So maybe Stephanie, based on your the product that you have and your experience, can you share?
Happy to do so. I think one of the biggest challenges historically to sustainability is that it wasn't seen as scalable. It was good for little pilot projects in certain regions of the world, but it couldn't be automated and scaled to the world's biggest companies around the world. So, the way we think about it at our company, we actually started our solution as just a marketplace. So businesses could buy and sell their excess inventory and textile waste. But if you think about it, having a platform like that is kind of just slapping a Band-Aid on the problem. Here, you have waste, go sell it, make some money. How do you actually get to the root of these problems and figure out, why do I have all this waste in the first place? Because it's expensive, it's inefficient. And how do I read that data and intelligently minimize that waste going forward? So that's where we leverage awesome tools like blockchain and machine learning AI, our software integration with companies like SAP, which is how Shuchi and I know each other. I think it's critical that businesses understand leveraging technology, that they can now do things automated at scale across industries and around the world very quickly, easily. and efficiently. Businesses, you kind of heard this already, but businesses need to be able to capture the right data in order to act on it, and then know that they can stand by those actions and actually talk about it publicly. I think the other challenge with sustainability and where technology can help is that a lot of times businesses are doing good work, or at least starting to do good work, but they're afraid to talk about it. You're holding it really close to your chest because you don't know if you if you misspeak, right, that's going to be a problem, or if you make a mistake. But thanks to technology, having a record and a proof that is auditable by third parties, that you can actually back up the awesome work you're doing. That's critically important. You can't change what you can't measure. So we actually spent the past 2 years with MIT and with the support of the UN, and we built out algorithms so that businesses and individuals can now see in real time, based on the things you buy and the actions you take with that item, how much water, chemicals, carbon emissions, waste, and dollars are saved. And we're opening up that tool now to even more, because once you know that, you can actually be a part of a solution, but even more importantly, be incentivized to take action and get rewarded. And we can talk about that in any number of ways by being a part of that solution and driving that environmental, economic, and social behavior. So a lot of exciting things thanks to technology that we're able to deliver on.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Can I quickly double click on what does that flow look like? So I think you briefly mentioned that your system integrates with inventory management tools at different organizations. Like how does that, just to make it real for people.
We knew we had to make, for any circular economy solution or any technology-based solution to be adopted, it needs to be quick, easy, and cost-effective for our customers. And if we're doing our job right, they don't need to worry about the technology. That's our job, and it's easy for adoption. But to make our solution easier to participate in, we actually plug into a business's inventory management system, whether it's SAP or their own proprietary system, or even just Excel spreadsheets, and automatically enter the data goes into our engine, which we call MateriMX. So you can finally see in one place, from a tier 1 to a tier 14 supplier, what you got, where it sits, what is it made of, and what do I need to do with it? And then our software reads that data and comes back with an action plan for you to take action. The best use case in supply chains these days is if, now that you know about it, can I reuse what I already have right where I have it? That is the most economically and environmentally friendly. But if you can't reuse it, it creates a plan as well for you to be able to resell it, donate it, or recycle it. And then with a click of a button in the software, you can take that action. It matches it to our vetted partners around the world. We have a team in the US, Europe, Asia, and Africa. And then it drives the action to a result. Because there's a lot of software out there that maybe are just tools or technology for technology's sake. We believe we have to be able to drive the action and the result and have an impact. So once that item is reused, resold, recycled, or donated, we map, measure, and trace that it got to that partner, what that economic and environmental impact is, and give you the financial and legal reporting you need to be able to do it. So that's kind of how we drive it down, and want to continue to invite everyone, all stakeholders, to be a part of the solution.
Wonderful. Thank you. Lindsay, from a ServiceNow perspective, and again, from an enterprise landscape, how and where are you seeing technology being used from a measuring, monitoring, and reporting standpoint? And I know we have our own ESG management tool, so anything you can share and talk to.
Yes, Stephanie, I love that you can't change what you can't measure. So measurable impact and utilizing technology responsibly will truly be what transforms this world. And as we think of just a corporate perspective, as we use our ESG management tool, and Stephanie, you had touched on this, that we have to be able to measure what our impact is, make sure that it can be audited by a third party, but making sure that we're seeing progress, whether that be, understanding what our corporate footprint is incredibly important. You can't, reduce your impact if you don't know what you're starting with. So just from a measuring component, it's becoming more and more important that companies are measuring their priority issues, and they're setting goals that are reachable and that they're aggressive enough. However, they're measuring that impact. And, at ServiceNow, as you said, we use our own ESG management tool, which is incredibly helpful of connecting all of our stakeholders. I think that's where technology plays this incredible opportunity where it's connecting everyone across the business because everyone has a part to play in sustainability. So making sure that we are able to collect the data from all of our stakeholders and really making sure that this is a movement as a company, and technology has the capability of doing that and breaking down some of those silos. I think as we think about what's happening, especially with social entrepreneurs, we are seeing an explosion right now of nonprofits and social enterprises utilizing technology to help solve the world's most complex problems. Because the fact is, you can reach more people with access, and many people have mobile devices now across the globe. So the opportunity of starting to rethink how we impact communities, how we get into communities, is going to be, the catalyst will be technology. We obviously have to use that sustainably, but we want to make sure, and responsibly, we want to make sure that we are understanding and really getting into each and every single one of those communities through technology and utilizing that to measure and then action on those measurements.
Wonderful. Roberta, from your perspective, how is the WMO leveraging? Are there any examples where you guys are leveraging technology? And
yes, of course. I think measuring, observing the climate is what we do, and how technology has a very big role in helping us to understand the science of the climate change. Because this is what is essential to take effective climate action. So climate science, modeling, observations, satellite data, what we all collect and are the tools that help us to understand the causes and the impacts of climate change and how to develop a strategy to address it. So there are some ways that we use the science and for developing effective policies, understanding the climate change, help policymaker to develop effective policy to address the problem. For example, to inform the design of policy to reduce greenhouse gases. And also to develop a renewable energy standards or carbon pricing, raising awareness, understanding what climate change is, and help us to raise the awareness of the problem and the impacts, and in turn to also create the political will which is necessary to support the climate action. Also important to identify the strategies to adapt and to the impact of climate change, such as building the seawalls, of developing drought-resistant crops, and also many other examples for industry, and that we maybe you have a better idea than me, that I work for an international organization, but also important to assess the risks and the vulnerabilities of industry, of governments, of communities, because this is different for every sector and region, and it's important to have this measure to allow to develop target strategies and to address also these risks. So, I think I can go on, but I stop here. Is important, as also you mentioned, to break silos, because this require really and I go back to the title of this session, of this webinar today, is a multifaceted approach that involves creating opportunity for collaboration, fostering interdisciplinary research, and building partnership, and promotive and inclusive decision-making, and investing also in capacity building. All things that we all have been mentioning already through the today.
Right, thank you. Tatyana?
I think it's all about, we all talk about data, right? And that's where technology can play a key role. So for example, if we have a KPIs for healthcare organizations that relate to energy consumption or usage of water, and then we measure, and use, data capturing technologies to measure and report on those. But in healthcare, we also need to think about, like in the United States, we tend, most of us, using electronic health records, right? In many countries, that's not the case. So you still have piles of papers that people move around. Can we change that? If you're looking at telehealth, telemedicine, that basically reduces number of trips, meaning, car rides and so on. So there are a lot of things that can be deployed, but I think one of the aspects of data capturing, and I mentioned that before, is that we don't collect and report on environmental data and impact on care in outcomes. And I'm really thrilled that, at least in my environment, we tend to encourage any disease experts or experts in any niche areas of healthcare to start measuring air quality, in all kind of water quality and everything else. And we have done in the past predictive modeling and used AI to accurately predict disease progression, types of diseases that are happening within certain communities.
Mm-hmm.
So, the technology has enormous play in the whole game. And I'm really glad that all of us highlighted main points where and how it can be used.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for sharing. I see some questions, and I know we have 15 minutes, so maybe we take the questions first, and then come back if we have time, because we can continue this conversation forever. It's like there's so much to talk about. But question from Drew. So first, as a comment, seems like organizations' procurement teams need to be educated and empowered to integrate sustainability into their procurement processes. And the question is, are you seeing this being put into practice in any of the industries that you work with? Who wants to take that first? Stephanie? Yes, no, please, Lindsay.
Happy to jump in. So we are seeing a huge push, especially so in technology. It's predominantly your biggest emitter is your scope 3 emissions, right? It's your vendors, it's who you're working with. So we're seeing a really big push in procurement. There are plenty of positions that are popping up in companies that are actually focused on sustainable procurement and working very closely with your vendors. We're also seeing a lot of incubators and accelerators working with companies. How do they get SBTI targets? So we're seeing more and more. And what's happening is you have larger companies and those that already have SBTI goals that are actually starting to work with their vendors and partners to help them create SBTI targets. So you're seeing this collective action opportunity come together where companies want to work with companies that have a shared value. And that's where you're absolutely right, that procurement is this amazing opportunity to actually work with more companies to make sure that they're meeting the SBTI targets, because you want to work with companies that have the same morals and values and are working towards the same outcomes as you. So you're actually seeing this happen across different industries to really work with one another to help make sure that everyone, the tide is rising together.
Yeah. And for folks that may not be familiar with SBTI as an acronym, can you share with us, Lindsay?
Yes, it's the Science-Based Target Initiative. So it is companies are, in order to hit their net zero goals, they have to have measurable goals. So you actually look at your footprint and then decide how much you actually have to decrease in order to hit your net zero targets.
Awesome.
Yeah,
great.
We're finding as well across industries, and we work, of course, with fashion, but also with automotive, aviation, CPG, and a lot of them are adopting these great targets. And within our software-based solution, you can actually add in your targets, and based on adding your key suppliers through procurement, your key vendors into our software, you can actually measure and report and benchmark against those targets and be able to, most importantly, see who's doing the good work. And like any good company, if they're a part of what's saving and making you money and doing good, actually incentivize them, contribute more, give them more work to your key vendors and partners. And I think that's really powerful part of this. People are doing good work, and it is work, and they should be incentivized. It's obviously up to the company to decide how to do that. But now having this record and proof and being able to see who contributed to that solution and participated, then it's very quick and easy to contribute back to them some of those savings and benefits.
Cool. Tatyana, Roberta, anything to add?
I just want to give an example, like in healthcare industry, there is a real interesting initiative in Stockholm. They have sustainable healthcare strategy, and they have developed a comprehensive sustainable strategies that kind of integrates environmental, social, and economic aspects. And it includes like investing in energy efficient buildings, promoting green procurement, implementing telemedicine. So things are happening. It just, we need to, again, capture how all that results in improved, for example, healthcare in those communities, or measure data on environmental impact of their investments, right? And then share best practices across all healthcare organizations. So next time I'm doing this talk, it will not be, oh, there's like one in this country, one in that country. We can say about massive initiatives that actually impacted in major improvements. So I agree with all of you that we need to capture and share more data on successful deployments in initiatives.
Roberta, anything?
No, just perhaps mentioning, you know, again, the importance of this data and transparency, and, you know, especially the UN Secretary General Gutierrez put together a group, and they produced a report that was launched at the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh last year about greenwashing. I mean, of course, data, transparency, and everything that we really mention today is important really to contrast these messages and this greenwashing that we really need to avoid and to install more integrity in these companies is really important.
Absolutely. And I feel like education and empowerment is a very intentional process that all of us should think about, and it has to happen continuously. So great. Well, our next question is around blockchain. So so Stephanie, I know you use blockchain, Tatyana, in the healthcare space. If there are any examples of blockchain that you can share where it's being utilized to kind of help with sustainable practices.
Happy to. I know blockchain, like sustainability, can seem as a buzzword to people. And just to clarify, this is not Bitcoin, this is not crypto, there are other use cases. But when you actually apply the underlying technology that powers crypto, right, and Bitcoin blockchain to supply chains and sustainability, it becomes such an incredibly powerful opportunity. And I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg seeing how it can be applied. We're not a blockchain technology company, but we use it because we found our customers, there needed to be a purpose. We have, when you're talking about a supply chain, you have a lot of people in your company and in your supply chain vendors and partners in a lot of different locations that have a lot of different data held in different places, right? And the idea with blockchain technology is that, and with our software solution, we can actually fix the breaks in that data and connect these disparate data sources all in one place. And that data has integrity to it. We know what that product is, what it's made of, where it sits, how long it's been sitting, because the information, that data, it's immutable and authentic, thanks to blockchain technology. And as that product moves through a supply chain, from raw materials to finished goods to end of life and around again, we can actually measure as well, using blockchain technology, the impact. And the technology just traces the story, and it's giving you the highest level of confidence in that because people are actually collaborating on the data. That's the whole idea. And you can verify what's behind it. And I think that's what's really powerful about it. Like I said, just believe we're at the beginning of seeing how it's going to be applied, but that it becomes for sustainability and supply chains a real game changer, talking about that transparency, which we're all going for. 100% circular and sustainable by 2030, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can add on the healthcare side, we've deployed it again. I'm not talking about crypto. And one of the things I always talk when I talk about blockchain is if you can't do things without blockchain, do them without blockchain. We talk about in healthcare about highly sensitive healthcare data, and certain features within the blockchain stack enable movements of the data in a highly secure, immutable, like protected way that makes it a real good channel of moving data. So if you probably all know, you need to write a consent and certain CDs or data are sent. I was surprised, I just came from HIMSS. They're like the whole company doing tons of money just faxing paper with patient records. So if we can make all of that secure via blockchain, and we deployed certain mechanisms that break private public key to enable patients, for example, to control who, when, and how have access to what subsets of their health data. So people have to understand that there is good, bad, and very useful features of the blockchain.
Wonderful. Any comments from anyone else? Or we can.
Maybe I just also mentioned that I know many companies that are using blockchain for carbon credits and carbon offsets. And we all see that, this is also another emerged market which has a lot of gray areas, and transparency is actually has been criticized by many newspaper. And they found that there was problems with these carbon credits and the measurements and the verification and the transparency. So blockchain now is also used in this area. And I think, as Stephanie said, we are seeing just the tip of the iceberg. It will be used more and more because it is one of these technology that help us more transparency and more direct exchange and transactions.
That's great. Awesome. Well, I know we have a few minutes left. Any last words? And perhaps just again on why is it important for each one of us to be a part of the solution, and how can each one of us participate in solving and making the world more sustainable? Let's see. Tatyana, do you want to kick us off? Any last words of wisdom for the audience from your experience?
Real quick, so I think we all kind of highlighted the sense of urgency and the effect of climate change, resource depletion, and health disparities becoming increasingly apparent. And as the healthcare sector continues significantly to global environmental issues, like we can't afford to delay any actions. Time to act is now. And I urge all of you to consider like the urgency. We all have data that we shared during this call. There is an urgency of these situations, immediate urgency, and we have a collective responsibility to share. And let's work together to create a more sustainable, equitable, and healthier future for all of us.
Awesome. Lindsay?
I would say that every single one of us have a part to play, and that innovation is going to be the thing that's going to create the world that we all want. So the more we can think about the intersectionality of environment and social and people, the more we can really start to transform at a very quick pace, but it's going to take each and every one of us. There are small things you can do on a daily basis, but every one of us has a role within our companies and our jobs to start thinking about how can our skills, how can our strategies transform to help solve some of the world's most complex problems. And we all need to do this together. We cannot do it alone. And it is the responsibility of each and every one of us to start moving forward so that the world we see in 20 years is the one we want to live in. And it's, you know, as Tatyana said, we can all be happy and healthy and live prosperous lives, and we all have to do it together.
Absolutely. Roberta?
Yeah, well, maybe resonate what was already said, just to say, you know, climate change is going to touch every aspect of our life and everything we care. And so all of us has a role to play to do it. And then, you know, maybe say we are not looking to do perfection, to be perfect. We maybe just start, you know, one or two action and focus on them and do it and start to change your lifestyle. I think this is very important, and nobody is perfect, but we all can do something about climate change and sustainability.
Absolutely. Thank you. Stephanie?
And this is not just sustainability departments. This is for the CEOs setting corporate agendas, the CFOs who are looking at the financials and want to save and make money, the CTOs and COOs, right, with the technology and the day-to-day operations, and the CMOs telling the good work that you're doing. So I'm doing this for my children. I want them to have clean water to drink, right? Clothes that aren't toxic to wear, a planet to live on, and we'll go change the world. So let's do it.
Thank you so much. Well, I really appreciate all of you being here, and let's do our part. And happy Earth Month to everyone. Thank you to our audience for joining and choosing to spend their time with us. And thank you all for all your insights and for the great conversation. Until next time. All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.